In the next 80 minutes, I will prove that you were robbed of $50 trillion, and the thief is still in your house. This isn't a conspiracy theory. This is math. And when you see the numbers, you will never look at your paycheck the same way again. Here's the crime scene. In 1971, the average American worker earned $9,870 per year. But here's what actually happened. The median income in America today is $59,000. That's $17,000 annual gap multiplied across 160 million workers, compounded over 54 years. That's how you get robbed of $50 trillion without ever seeing the thief's face. But here's what makes this crime perfect. The money didn't vanish into thin air. It didn't evaporate. It didn't get lost in some bureaucratic filing cabinet. It was transferred. Surgically, silently, legally, from your pocket to theirs. And they have names. They have addresses. They throw charity galas while you're calculating whether you can afford both rent and groceries this month. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Before I show you who took your money, you need to understand how the heist was even possible. Because the most brilliant part of this crime isn't the theft itself. It's the system they built to make you blame yourself for being poor. You've been taught a lie since childhood. Work hard, save money, and you'll be fine. This was true once. It was true for your grandparents. It might have even been true for your parents. But somewhere between then and now, the rules changed. And nobody told you. Here's what I mean. In 1950, a factory worker at Ford could buy a 3-bedroom house with 2.5 years of salary. That's it. 2.5 years of work, and you owned your home outright. Today, that same house in Detroit costs 12 years of median salary. In San Francisco, 30 years. Did the house get better? Did it grow extra rooms? Did it develop magical self-cleaning powers? No, the house stayed the same. Your money got smaller. But here's the psychological masterstroke. They made you believe it was your fault. You didn't work hard enough. You didn't save enough. You made bad decisions. You should have invested smarter. You should have learned the code. You should have hustled harder. This narrative serves one purpose: to keep you running on a treadmill while the floor beneath you slowly sinks. Because if you're blaming yourself, you're not asking the real question. Who moved the floor? The answer involves a secret meeting. 9 men, a private island, and a plan so audacious it would reshape human civilization. But that story has a beginning. And it starts with something most people have never even heard of. A private rail car departs from a New Jersey train station under cover of darkness. Inside are 6 of the wealthiest men in America, representing 1/4 of the world's entire wealth. They're using fake names. They're calling each other by first name only. Their destination is classified. They're heading to Jekyll Island, Georgia, a private island owned by J.P. Morgan. For 9 days, these men bankers, politicians, and financial titans will design a system that will control the money supply of the most powerful nation on Earth. They will call it the Federal Reserve. But here's what they didn't put in the history books. The Federal Reserve is not federal. It has no reserves. And it's not even a government agency. It's a private banking cartel given the legal authority to create money out of nothing. Read that again. Private bankers creating money from nothing. This is not a conspiracy. This is their own documentation. When the Federal Reserve was created in 1913, it was sold to the American public as a solution to financial panics. It would stabilize the economy. It would protect the little guy. But in the 112 years since its creation, the dollar has lost 97% of its purchasing power. That house your great-grandfather bought for $5,000, it now costs $500,000. Stability? The United States has experienced the Great Depression, the 1970 stagflation, the dot-com crash, the 2008 financial crisis, and the 2020 economic meltdown. Protection for the little guy? The wealth gap is wider than at any point since the Gilded Age. Every single promise was a lie. But here's the part that should make your blood boil. The same families who designed this system in 1910 are still at the top today. Their great-grandchildren sit on the boards of the same institutions. They attend the same private schools. They marry into the same circles. And every single time the system they created crashes, guess who gets bailed out? Not you. The 2008 financial crisis proved this beyond any doubt. And what happened next should have started a revolution. It didn't. Here's why. September 15, 2008, Lehman Brothers collapses. The fourth largest investment bank in America files for bankruptcy in the biggest financial death in history. But Lehman wasn't alone. Goldman Sachs, Morgan Stanley, Citigroup, Bank of America, every major bank in America was on the edge of total annihilation. They had gambled trillions on subprime mortgages. They had packaged garbage loans as A securities. They had created a bomb, sold it to pension funds and retirement accounts, and pocketed the fees. And when the bomb exploded, they should have died. But they didn't, because they had a weapon more powerful than any army. 4 words, too big to fail. Within weeks, the Federal Reserve and the Treasury Department had committed over $700 billion in direct bailouts. But that number is a lie. The real number, when you include loans, guarantees, and asset purchases, exceeded $29 trillion. $29 trillion. To put that in perspective, that is enough to pay off every mortgage in America and still have $12 trillion left over. But here's the twist. The banks got the money. The homeowners got evicted. Over 10 million Americans lost their homes in the foreclosure crisis. They were thrown out onto the streets, while the executives who caused the crisis received record bonuses. In 2009, Goldman Sachs paid $16.2 billion in bonuses. The same year regular Americans were lining up at food banks. This wasn't a bug in the system. This was the system working exactly as designed. Because in a world where private banks can create money, they don't fear losses. They can socialize the losses onto the public while privatizing the profits into their own pockets. It's the perfect crime. But 2008 was just a rehearsal. The real theft was happening in plain sight, in a mechanism so subtle that even economists were blind to it for decades. It's called asset inflation. And once you understand it, you'll never see the economy the same way again. You've been told that inflation is about prices going up. That's a half-truth designed to keep you confused. There are actually 2 types of inflation. And the second type is the one that's been robbing you blind. The first type is consumer price inflation. This is what the government measures. This is the 3% or 4% they report on the news. This is the rising cost of groceries and gas. It's annoying, it's visible, and it's actually the distraction. The second type is asset inflation. This is what happens when newly printed money flows into stocks, real estate, and financial assets, and this number is never reported. Here's why that matters. When the Federal Reserve prints money, it doesn't mail checks to your house. The new money enters the economy through the banking system. It goes to financial institutions first. They buy assets. Asset prices rise. By the time that money trickles down to you through wages, through spending, the assets have already been bid up. This is why housing prices have outpaced wages for 50 years. This is why the stock market keeps hitting all-time highs while most Americans have less than $1,000 in savings. This is why billionaires saw their wealth double during a pandemic while small businesses were shuttered. The money printer doesn't create wealth. It redistributes it from those who earn money through labor to those who own assets. This is the $50 trillion theft I mentioned at the beginning. It's not a tax that appears on your pay stub. It's an invisible transfer mechanism that operates every single day, every single hour, every single minute. And here's the darkest part. They've known about this effect for 300 years. It was discovered by an Irish-French economist named Richard Cantillon in the early 1700s. He observed that when new money enters an economy, it doesn't spread evenly. The first receivers of new money benefit at the expense of the last receivers. Today, we call this the Cantillon effect, and the Federal Reserve isn't ignorant of it. They designed the system around it. But you might be thinking, surely this can't go on forever. You're right. It can't. And the signal that the end is near just appeared in the most unexpected place. There's a number that central bankers pray you never discover. It's called the interest coverage ratio. For a country, it measures something terrifyingly simple. Can you afford to pay the interest on your debt without borrowing more money? For 50 years, the United States could. As of 2025, it cannot. Here's the math they're hiding from you. The U.S. government now pays over $1.1 trillion per year just in interest payments. Not paying down the debt, just the interest. That's more than the entire military budget, more than Medicare, more than any single program the government operates. But here's the doom loop. To pay that interest, the government must borrow more money. That new borrowing adds to the debt. That new debt generates more interest, which requires more borrowing. This is called a sovereign debt trap. And no nation in human history has ever escaped one without either defaulting on their debt or destroying their currency. No nation. Rome tried to escape it by debasing their coins. Within 2 centuries, their empire collapsed. China tried to escape it with paper money. Within 80 years, their dynasty fell. Germany tried to escape it by printing marks. Within 4 years, the middle class was liquidated. Britain tried to escape it by maintaining their empire. Within a decade, they were begging the IMF for a bailout. The pattern is absolute. But something different is happening this time. Something that's never happened before in human history. The entire world is in the same trap simultaneously. Europe, Japan, China. Every major economy is drowning in debt. There's no external savior. There's no new superpower waiting to take over and stabilize the system. This time, when the music stops, everyone loses their chair. But here's the twist. Some people already know this, and they're not waiting around to see what happens. In 2024, something unprecedented happened in the gold market. Central banks bought more gold than at any point in recorded history. China, Russia, India, Poland, Turkey, Singapore. These nations dumped hundreds of billions in U.S. Treasury bonds and bought physical gold. This is not speculation. This is not conspiracy. This is publicly available data from the World Gold Council and the International Monetary Fund. But here's the question nobody in mainstream media is asking. Why? These are the most sophisticated financial institutions on the planet. They have access to every investment vehicle imaginable. They could buy stocks, bonds, real estate, cryptocurrencies, commodities. They're choosing gold. A metal that pays no interest. A metal that sits in a vault and does nothing. Unless they know something. Unless they see the same math we just reviewed and have concluded that the dollar-based system is approaching its termination date. Gold has one unique property that no other financial asset possesses. It's not someone else's liability. If you hold a treasury bond, you're depending on the U.S. government's ability to pay you back. If they can't, your bond is worthless. If you hold a stock, you're depending on a company's future profits. If they fail, your stock is worthless. If you hold gold, you hold a finished product. It cannot default. It cannot be printed. It has held value for 5,000 years of human civilization. The central banks are building lifeboats. They're smiling for cameras while quietly heading for the exits. And here's what they're not telling you. There's not enough gold in the world for everyone to exit at once. When the panic starts, and it will start, the price of real assets will become unattainable for the average person. The window is closing. But the real question isn't about gold, or Bitcoin, or any specific asset. The real question is about you. I promised you a twist. Here it is. The people who designed this system didn't just build a wealth extraction machine. They built something far more sinister. They built a prison of the mind. Every element of modern financial life is designed to keep you trapped. Student loans ensure you start your adult life in debt. Credit cards normalize spending money you don't have. Mortgages stretch you to your financial limit. Retirement accounts lock your wealth in a system you can't control. You don't own your house until you've paid the bank for 30 years. You don't own your retirement until the government lets you access it. You don't even own the cash in your wallet. It can be inflated away at any time. The system doesn't just steal your money. It steals your optionality. It keeps you one paycheck away from disaster. And in that state of constant financial stress, you don't have the bandwidth to ask dangerous questions. You don't ask who's really in charge. You don't ask why the rules keep changing. You don't ask why every crisis ends with the rich getting richer. You just keep running on the treadmill. That's not an accident. That's the design. But here's what they didn't account for. Information is the one thing they can't fully control. Not anymore. Videos like this one. Books that explain the system. Conversations that spread the truth. They can't stop it all. And once you see the game, you can't unsee it. You start making different choices. You start building outside their system. You start converting your labor into things that can't be printed. You become ungovernable. Not through violence. Not through protests. But through simple, quiet non-compliance. Every dollar you move out of their system is a vote against the machine. Every asset you acquire outside their control is a declaration of independence. They built the prison, but they forgot to lock one door: knowledge. Let me leave you with a question that will determine your financial future. In 10 years, do you want to be the person who saw this coming, or the person who didn't? The Romans didn't believe their empire would fall. Neither did the British. Neither did the French aristocrats the night before the Revolution. Every generation believes they are the exception. They are never the exception. The $50 trillion was already stolen. That money is gone. Nothing will bring it back. But the next $50 trillion is still in play. The wealth transfer is accelerating. The debt spiral is tightening. The central banks are sprinting for the exits. The question is whether you'll be ahead of the stampede or trampled by it. I'm not going to tell you what to buy. That's not my job. My job was to show you the map. What you do with it is your choice. But I will tell you this. The people who built this system didn't build it for your benefit. They built it for theirs. And they will let it burn before they give up control. History doesn't repeat, but it echoes. And right now, the echo is deafening. The only question is whether you're listening. The $50 trillion heist wasn't the end. It was the beginning.